gentlemen, we are in the zone. Pete Coles, Rich Sutter. This is our 60th show, folks. The Big 60. In the zone is having a birthday today, and it's a big 60. Hey, Pete, congratulations.
Congratulations to you.
Never really thought we'd get 60 like we did, and it seems like it's been a very short time, but man, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. In the Zone goes to the Big 60 today. Fabulous. Happy birthday to everybody who's been with us, and hopefully many, many more. So, Pete, we're going to go right off the jump here. We got the Celtics, and we've got the Mavericks. That's the big story. That's all that's left in basketball right now is the NBA Final. Who do you like? Who's your selection?
I'm going with the Celtics. We're riding them all the way home because we thought, especially you, thought the Pacers were going to give them a problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Out the door.
No
Swept
problem.
them. Yeah. And then Porzingis is back, right?
Yep,
So
that's what I read this morning.
That's a new dimension. You know, he doesn't know if he's 100%, which I think is convictive enough that he's not. But he's going to play, and he's going to go. And so that's really important for them, especially lineup and matchup-wise, and we'll get into that a little bit later. We're going to start off with our NCAA Fish segment, though, because we came across something that we thought was a little bit staggering, and we wanted to just push up on it. It sheds a little bit more light to what's been going on in the NCAA right now in terms of college sports spiraling out of control. Many people have described it as a spiral coming out of control. Wild Wild West show have been some of the descriptors of it, and it doesn't seem that anybody has the ability to have their hand on the steering wheel right now, and this thing is just moving all around the track. And so I came across this. I thought it was interesting. Some of the top NCAA programs that are out there that are playing sports and having these enormous athletic budgets. Now, I can't tell you everything that went into all of this, all of the subsets that went into this numerical assertion, but here it is, and it's pretty staggering. Rutgers last year, minus $54 million in sports.
They lost money.
Lost money. Football, too.
Huh.
Big Ten, lost $54 million. Now, maybe that has something to do with the fact that you have to move every single one of your teams across the Big Ten territory now. Now your swimming and diving team has to go to Nebraska. Now your baseball team has to go to Nebraska. And so you added all that in. I think that's certainly part of it, but I think right now what you're watching is when they add this up numerically, there's a little bit of a myth that some of these programs are operating at such a big revenue increase, and that's what I think that has to do with a lot of what's going on right now when they move the NIL now essentially to campuses and have capped it at $20 million. What does that now mean for everybody? And when they say it's capped at $20 million, that doesn't mean everybody has $20 million. It means that you can't use more than $20 million. And so that's going to be, when you're looking at a school now who's minus $54 million, how do they come up with the additional 20 that's now going to be on campus, on revenue, where they used to have it off campus and in Collective and all these other places? Now it's coming on campus, and you're going to have another $20 million in expense. Allowable.
What sports do they start to cut?
What sports start to cut?
You know what I'm saying? At that point, they're essentially a business as well. They're not a charity.
The question I guess I would have also, they're not. It's not. It's a state university. It's a state university, Rutgers, State University of New Jersey. I guess my question would be, does that have any chance of getting rectified into the near future where eventually it turns positive? Because then I would question why they moved to the Big Ten in the first place. Because now they've been in there several years, and if you're still minus $54 million, I didn't know what went into all this mathematics, but here's some other ones that might surprise you. University of Connecticut, Pete.
Yeah.
$30 million in the hole. $30 million in the hole. Won the national title back-to-back. They're $30 million in the hole.
The thing is, how many do they pay every time they have to rent the Excel Center? Do they have to rent it?
Of course they do.
You know what I'm saying?
Of
That's a
course they
cost.
do. Of course they do. Back in the day, UMass, in order to use the Mullen Center for practice, was getting charged like $1,000 a day. And then when they had a game there, that number went significantly up.
Doesn't the school own that building?
They have somebody manage the building for them back in the day. And that's when they built the Kennedy Center. Now the practice center is there, and they practice in there, so they don't have to practice in Mullen. They only go to Mullen for games now. So it's a really odd arrangement with some of these schools right now. They can't even get into their own gymnasium. Some of these other places that play in big-time arenas as well, they're not practicing in their own gyms. You know, they have campus facilities, but their arenas, you know, like Seton Hall's probably playing in the Meadowlands a good bit. You know, out in the arena out there, they're not going to play at home that much. They have a home arena, but it's really Catholic school arena, really small, tiny little bandbox. Certainly not.
Yeah, like the Cage used to be.
It's not a Big East, right? It's not a Big East environment by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm sure that they're farmed out of there most of the time, if not all the time. I think you said there's others that are, you know, paying other places, you know, that are just, you know, practicing in those places. But Houston was $40 million on the left side. UCF, University of Central Florida, $40 million in the hole. It was unbelievable. There's just a whole bunch of, now with the $20 million expense costs going in there, here are the expenses versus revenue going in 2022. Your expenses are $132 million, and your revenue is $116 million. So it's a net loss all across the board. In 2021, it was $104.1 in expense, and revenue is $77 million. 39, you know, plus $1 million increase in revenue also in that year. For some strange reason, it went from $77 million to $116 million plus $39 million in 1 year. Those are some of the things that make you go home. All right.
Well, is that because of TV contracts or something like that?
It must be that some of this conference realignment and all this other stuff and the new contracts. Yeah, it's got it. That's where they get their money from. So it's got.
I mean, the question is when they give these figures out saying we're losing all this money, where does the TV? Because they have to get TV money from these conferences. There's profit sharing on all these TV deals. Where does that money go? Does it go into the general fund and not get counted against? You know what are they? What are they doing?
It goes to each school. That's
right, but
why,
where does
why
it?
we have the catfish.
What ledger does it go into? Is what I'm saying. Does it go into the athletics ledger, or does it go into the general ledger?
I would say that a lot of times it's a little bit of both, Pete. I would say it's a little bit of both. You know, because when you're going out and you're incurring the expenses are, you know, purely on the university side.
Right, to
you know,
athletics.
they're spending the money to fly you here, to fly you here,
Right.
to fly you there.
Yeah.
So I would assume somehow when they get any of that revenue back, they try and wash it off and try and come out and balance it out. And then if there's anything left, they're probably absorbing that up into the regular budget. That's probably going up. That's why they say that the faculty and some of these people put up with it. Because it's gonna, if it's successful, it's gonna build some libraries. If it's successful, it's gonna build some buildings. I don't know that that's true anymore.
Yeah.
I'm looking at some of these numbers, and I was a little bit shocked. So we can go, Pete, just for a second, if you could flip up our Portal Potty. We have the Portal Potty Pirate update, and we just wanted to go through it real quick. This was Evan Miyakawa who came up with this. A little bit of disagreement between myself and Evan on some of this, but he did a great job putting it together. The disagreement is purely just on, I think that this is a great way to look at things mathematically and give it a numerical value and try and say one is better than the other. But in basketball, it's just not quite that easy. And so here we go with St. John's, and the number that we'll give you right after we give you the team is the number of transfers that they bring in. The number that they're bringing in through the portal. Okay. So they have right now 4, and they get an ATQ rating here. And it's measured by a projected Bayesian performance rating overall.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Which comes out with a player value. And so St. John's, number 1 in their player value, ATQ, 5.13. I don't know what it all means, Pete, but we're just going to give it to the fans. All right, number 2 is Arkansas. They brought in 5 players out of the portal. That's 1/3 of your team. 33% of your team came out of the portal. 4.79 they got on their ATQ rating. Number 2. Number 3, Michigan. 6 gentlemen out of the portal. Dusty May getting into Michigan quick and getting that portal revved up. 4.67 was their value. Texas Tech, they just went up the charts here. Again, this changes day to day when people are signing new players, and there's still some pretty good players out there. So this list, I'd be anxious to see if Evan's going to rotate this list and keep it updated, because that's interesting. So right now we go with Texas Tech. They went into 4, but as I said before, they picked up J.T. Toppin just recently. I think he's one of the – I had him in the top 20 in the draft, and I think he's one of the really good, exciting players in the NCAA right now. Like 93 players took their name out, something like that. I thought that number was really, really high.
Of the portal?
Not out of the portal, out of the NBA draft.
Oh, okay.
So
Gotcha.
they returned back, which is good news for a lot of these schools. But I thought that number was a little bit high, a little bit odd. I didn't think that you had that many players who thought that they were NBA quality and ready to go. I guess sometimes it's just it might be good to look. So you got Baylor, 5. They brought in 3 players, and they have some really good freshmen. So you look at that and say, yeah, they're 5, but when you look at what they have and what you look at what they just brought in, that's a pretty good number. 6, Houston only brought in 1 player. They must really like this guy. I couldn't find out who it was, but we'll find out, and we'll get it to you next week. Ohio State, number 7. They brought in 4 players. New coach, Diebler, going to take a run at it, and he's going to bring in some of his own guys. 4.76 rating, not bad. Alabama brought in 4 players. They're in the 8th spot. Duke brought in 4 players. Duke bringing in 4 transfers lets you know that the college basketball world has been completely turned upside down. Duke bringing in 4 transfers. That's how you know. Okay, Florida, number 3. Okay, number 10, but they bring in 3. Their number is 3 players. Dayton, I thought that was interesting to see them this high on the list out of the A10. They have 3 players coming in. They have a 3.99 rating. Kentucky came in, and they're bringing in, hold on to your hat, they're bringing in Portal Pirates, 9 people out of the portal. Got a rating of 3.87. Coach Pope out there trying to make things work quickly, but it also doesn't help when the previous coach ransacked your roster. Okay, so you're going with Connecticut in the 13th spot. They're bringing in 2 players. They're keeping it pretty steady over there in UConn. But again, I had a little bit of bad news from my Husky friends. They better keep going. I think they got some more players to add to this in order to make it at least comparable to what they had in the last 2 years for their championship run. Can't knock Coach Hurley and his crew down there, though. They're doing an absolutely fabulous job. Colorado coming in here at 14, 3.79, and Creighton, 15, with 2 players. Colorado brought in 1. While we're on the subject of Creighton, Coach McDermott, one of our favorite guys in the business to watch his team, plays really good on the offensive end, recruits really well, good players that fit his style and fit into his program, and really have a lot of high respect for him. He was just given a really, really nice honorarium where they're going to name the practice facility at Creighton. They're going to rename the facility after the McDermott family. Very, very cool. Coach McDermott has been a great coach at Creighton. 9 years. He's been to the NCAA out of the 14 years that he's been there. And also his finest piece of coaching might have been with his own son, Doug McDermott Jr., who was the 2014 National Player of the Year, 3-time All-American, and also played in the NBA for 10 years. So great news out in Creighton for the Blue Jay family, also for the McDermott family. Well done, well received. Nolan Traore is one of the people who was picked, presumably picked, one of the international players who was presumably picked in the top 25, has decided that he's going to stay in France and stay in the Pro League in France for a little bit of time. Okay, so we're going to slip back into some NBA stuff right now, and we're going to take you through a little bit of interesting stuff that we found in the NBA, and then we're going to go right into the series. And Pete and I are going to – Pete likes the Celtics, and I don't think Pete gave me a game yet. How many games do you think it'll take him to finish off the Mavericks?
I don't see Dallas as a very – I mean, they made it to the finals, so they're a good team, but they haven't faced a lot of great opposition. I'm thinking 5.
Pete's saying 5. Okay. I'm going to say it's 6, but we're both on the same side. We're both saying Celtics. Pete says 5. I say 6. I think we're right there. Okay, this is an NBA, ABA combine leaders of playoff points. I thought it was pretty interesting because Celtics fans will enjoy this one. It showed that Larry Bird had led the NBA in playoff points for a very, very long time. And then Michael Jordan came along and really had a great year and obliterated that. But Larry Bird had an unbelievable year. And so we're going to go through the top, maybe 15 we'll go through here, of the NBA playoff most points in a year. So this is the person in the playoffs and how many points they scored in 1 year. I think one of the reasons I did this because I think the point totals will be interesting to people. It didn't say games. Okay, so number one on the list is Michael Jordan, 759 points in 1992 playoffs. Second, LeBron James, 748 points, 2018 playoffs. Kawhi Leonard, number three, 732 points in 2019. Hakeem, the Dream, Elijah Wan. He was fabulous, 725 points, and that was on the 1995 Houston Rockets team, and they were very, very good. Number five, the Mercurial, Allen Iverson, unbelievable NBA talent, came up with 723 points in 2001. The big man, in the sixth spot, the big man, Shaquille O'Neal. He's up there. 707 points in 2006. None of them were on the free throw line. Number seven, LeBron James. There he is again. So you can be on this more than once. It's interesting to see. 697 points in 2012. So LeBron is the first repeat. Number eight, Kobe Bryant, may he rest in peace, one of the great ones of all time, 695 points, played on the Lakers team that were unbelievable. 2009, that team was fabulous. He was just a great talent to watch. I had the joy to watch him in high school and then watch him go into his pro career and really enjoyed him. My Uncle Harvey, a great gentleman back in New York, great Knick fan, but absolutely loved Kobe Bryant, and we were devastated when he was taken from us. Number nine, again, let's go Michael Jordan, 680 points in 1998. Again, number 10, Kobe, 671 in 2010. Let's go back to 11, Michael Jordan. This guy was great, 666 points in 1993. Hakeem again, 664. He's in the 12th spot in 1994. Dwayne Wade, 654. I thought he'd be up there in 2006. That was a good one. And then you also have Charles Barkley, 638. He came in 14th, 1993. Some of these guys are about ready to get a wake-up call. Giannis Antetokounmpo, I'll do him last, 634, 221, 2021. The reason I'm going to say some of these guys are going to get a wake-up call is because right now Luka, has 489 points currently. He would need to average over 38 points a game in order to eclipse Michael Jordan, but he's going to certainly wind up, as long as he stays healthy, he's certainly going to wind up very close to the top of everything there. Absolutely no question about that. All right, so we have some other things to cover with you today, and we're going to do that right now. What we want to cover with you right now is jump right into the series, Pete. We're going to jump right into the NBA. We're going to go right into the series, and we're going to come right at you. We're going to keep it as straight as we can. We broke it down into a couple of different categories for you in order for us to explore the series in intimate fashion. We want to really get into this for you because this is the end of the basketball season, and we've been here all year watching this culminate down where the Celtics were absolutely dominant all year long. That's a great story. The team was fabulous all year long, maintained in our super top 15, maintained the entire number one spot, I believe, the entire year, and then maybe might have slipped up one time and got bounced out by the Wolves, I think, maybe, Pete. We'll have to go back and get our archivist to check on that one. But I'll tell you right now, they had an absolutely fabulous year. In our top 15, I'd say they were there the entire year. You can clearly say that. And you have the other side with the Dallas Mavericks. And, Pete,
this is where you finished them. This is the end of the year.
This is where they came. And so this is one of our final 15. And this is what really makes it really interesting. You know, the Mavericks did climb up a good bit as the year was. Most of the year on our 15, we had them 13, 14, somewhere out there. And then Kyrie and Luka talked about their chemistry. They talked about clicking, and they really did start to click, and they really did do some good stuff. I do, you know, I think that at least the Mavericks, when they went through, you know, Pete, you alluded that they didn't really play a whole lot of people, but they did, you know, knock off who they had to knock off.
Yeah, they got your job done. But
You know.
they're coming in. You know, they're coming in. They came in. I'm looking at their finish here.
So if I told you they eliminated 3 of the top 4 in the West, they took out the Clippers and our guy James Harden. So that was a decent win, I guess. And then they went and took the Thunder. That was a pretty good win. And then beat the Wolves. So I think, you know, Kyrie, one of the things, this is what I laid out. What do you think is his motive coming in, Pete?
Kyrie.
Yeah. I mean,
he just wants. He just wants
this
to
is-
redeem himself in everybody's fans, because everybody's been saying for years that he's a hindrance instead of a help. They all know he's a super talented player, but he's not a locker room guy.
Yeah, at least some of that, you know, it was interesting because some of that, some of what happened with him, and I can ride with him a little bit on this, because much of what happened with him was around his vaccination status, where his kind of popularity seemed to go to a really, really different place, I thought, was when he was getting absolutely hammered on television every day because he was kind of the voice of the unvaccinated in the NBA. I'm not sure he was the only person in the NBA that didn't, but he certainly was the voice of that group and said he would forfeit in upwards of $30 million in order to hold his point. And so I think some of that came out, and now that it bears out, you hear some of the stuff that's coming out with him being in the finals and some of the narrative that's around it now. You know, they're talking a little bit of a different story. The same guys who talked him down are now saying how great he is and how wonderful he is. And so he's mercurial.
A little pandering.
For sure. Well, they're going to have to talk to him at some point now. You know, you're going to have to interview him. You're going to have to talk to him. So, you know, I think it's interesting. What kind of reception do you think he gets in Boston Garden, Pete?
I think it's going to be mixed. I mean, people certainly appreciated what he did here, but there was also always the constant tension that he caused.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think
the organization's going to give him a good, a good welcome back, but I think the fans is going to be a mixed reaction. Some
Yeah.
people hated him.
No, I think it's going to be interesting. I think it is going to be interesting. You know, Boston fans can be very tough. Boston fans can be very tough. I'm really interested. I don't really know how it's going to go with that. You know, I think maybe they might, you know, give him a little bit of a warm welcome, you know, as a former player and a guy who was, you know, done a lot of good things there. Or are they going to focus on some of the things that were the negatives and things that basically, you know, created, as you said, tension and some different stuff. So we'll keep a focus on that. The game is Thursday night. It's been a long layoff, obvious. I didn't think that would be that long of a layoff. I thought it was quite a long layoff in between when the Mavericks and the Wolves got finished, and then now we're out till Thursday all the way. I thought they could have got this series started a little bit earlier, but we're out till Thursday. Everybody rested, and I think that might have been beneficial to the Celtics in that the next topic I wanted to cover, Pete, is Porzingis. So he's saying he's going to play. He's saying he's 100%, not 100%, not sure if he's 100%, which says to me that by definition he's not 100%, because if he was 100%, he'd say I'm 100%. So,
Well, but wait a minute. Is that little, what they call in wrestling, kayfabe, where he doesn't want to tell people, he doesn't want to tell the other team if he is 100%, let him think he's a little bent.
Yeah, that's psychological maybe. You might be right. You might be right. What do you think is his impact in the series? Do you think he's been out a while? Do you think he's going to be able to get? Do you think
He's got to bring some rust off, I'm sure.
Definitely got to have some rust on him. And the issue that they're having, especially from a coaching staff, is right now, would you take Horford out the way that he's playing? He's playing so well right now.
Well, here's the thing: you ease Porzingis back in now that Horford's playing. Well, if Horford's playing well, right, which he is, you ease Porzingis back in. No pressure on him now. He gets back up to speed. And give Horford some time off. Give him a little chance to rest. Maybe that's the formula for a huge win. You know what I mean? Like a huge,
Yeah.
this is a kind of a knock their block off type thing.
I think it's an interesting thing for the coaching staff to have to confront right now in the start of a game one. You know, he hasn't been in for over a month, and now you're gonna. I would say you probably return him to the starting lineup because he didn't do anything to lose. It's not you didn't take him out of the starting lineup because he wasn't playing well. You didn't take him out of the starting lineup because he wasn't a good teammate. You didn't take him out of the starting lineup for a number of different reasons. You took him out of the starting lineup because he was hurt.
Yeah, but do they talk to him and say?
And he can't control that.
Do they talk to him and say, Horford's on a hot streak right now. We're going to ease you back in and split minutes, and just come back up to speed in your own time.
Yeah.
There's no pressure on you. You put him back in the starting lineup, there's going to put pressure on his shoulders that he may not need coming back like that.
No, there's a lot of factors that go into it. You know, I think if I was a coach, I'd want to sit down with the player. I'd want to sit down with Horford, you know, and see where his mindset was at, because you don't want to blow his mind either.
Right.
You know, he's been playing great. You want to keep him right where he's at. So I think you might be right. I think what I might do if I was coaching his team is because Horford's such a veteran and they're in a good rhythm right now. You know, let him stay and use Porzingis off the bench.
Well, it always seems like Horford understands his role.
Yeah.
And I think he's okay. There's not enough ego to say, "Oh, if you put me back on the bench, I'll be pissed." I don't think he's going to be pissed. I think he's going to come in and do his job. But there's also the thing that says, "We need you now to keep at the level you're at. You can't lay back at this point.
Yeah.
You got to be the support. You got to be the leader role." And as Porzingis starts to work his way back in, we'll kind of balance it out, and then we'll see where we're at.
It's a measure of effectiveness, really.
Yeah.
You know, and so what you have is a situation where Porzingis started most of the season, and the team, you know, was really, really good. He caught the injury late, and it was unfortunate, you know. But I think they would probably like to return things to the normalcy. But also for somebody coming off of an injury like that who's not 100%, if he goes right back into the starting lineup and gets re-injured right away, that's going to be problematic as well, too. You're going to have taken all that time and all that effort,
Well,
and I'm not sure that's going to be.
That's why I don't see him throwing him right back in there like that.
Yeah.
If they had nothing else, yeah, well, that's what you got to do.
I think you're right. I think you're right on that. I think it might be, you know, and again, the piece of it also is that, as you alluded to, the psychological piece of it, they know where he's at. You know, they have a pretty good indication of where he's at percentage-wise. And so that will factor into it as well, I assume.
Yeah.
If he's closer to 100, they may go and throw him in. But if they think themselves he's at 80, they may say, look, it's not worth it. We're going to slow roll him and bring him back, you know, quietly, especially with the way things are going right now. They're certainly playing well.
Well, if he can come back in a supportive role and supercharge segments of the game, that could be what puts away your opponent. You know what I mean?
100%.
Horford's doing his thing, right? He comes out to take a
100%.
rest, put in Porzingis, where Porzingis lights it up for a couple minutes and then sits back down. That could be psychological to the other team. And Dallas is saying, we can't win this, man. Good Lord, the bench guys Porzingis coming off the bench and lighting us up.
We're going to talk about that in a minute. Also, like, this is where I think the Celtics are going to, they're going to do what the Nuggets did to the Heat last year. They're just going to outweigh them. You know, the Celtics have that depth, and so we're just talking about, you know, if you're Missoula,
We're talking about an injured player coming in and lighting you up.
well, if you're Missoula, you're hoping that he comes back and plays well, you know, and indications that he will. You know, he's a good player. But the thing is now you're talking about two, you know, okay, he's back. Now we got some options. Now I can do some things. So if you're Coach Missoula, I think you're a little bit happy that you got him back, and now you got that depth that's really going to be able to wear and beat on this team, the Mavericks, that doesn't have that same depth, if you ask me. And so we're going to go through that. This is, you know, even in the starting lineup, I think the Celtics have some edges, and we're going to break that down one by one as we go through it. The Celtics, as we talked about, Pete, are going for their 18th They're tied right now, and they're going for their 18th title. That would give them the NBA record if they got this one. So it's amazing. The people of Boston will go crazy if they can pull this off, and, well, they should. This is something else. The Mavericks last won their last NBA title in 2011. The coach that they have now is Jason Kidd, one of the best point guards around. I loved watching him play. He was a great, great basketball player and a really good point guard. But he's actually the coach of the Mavericks right now, and he was a point guard on that 2011 team. So the record, what does it look like on the record for both of these teams? Boston closed out 64-18. Really, really strong. The Mavericks were 50-32, not quite as strong. The point differential, the Celtics had an 11-point differential in their games, Mavs 2.3. So that's where you get some of the point spread from the Vegas people. That's where they start to make their money and look at that and they say, okay, they usually win by 11, they usually win by 2.3. Celtics are at home, boom, boom. That's why they're 6.5 favorites right tonight. Okay, their offensive rating, Celtics were first in the NBA with a 122. The Mavericks were eighth with the 117. Defensively, the Celtics were much better. They have a defensive rating that was second at 110. And over there on the other side, the Mavs were 118. The leading scorers for both teams, you have Luka averaging 33 points a game for the Mavericks, and you have Jason Tatum doing really, really good things with that balanced offense at 26.9. Okay, so as I alluded to before, the Mavs did eliminate 3 of the West's top 4 seeds. They took out the Clippers, they took out the Thunder, and they took out the Wolves. And this is kind of what we talked about a little bit earlier in some of our earlier previous shows, is that the NBA right now, especially if you're out on the West Coast, it's kind of turned upside down right now. The Lakers are on the bottom. The Golden State Warriors are on the bottom. And this team, the Mavericks were, as we alluded to on our Super 15, they ran 7th in the Super 15th, and that was the highest they had been all year. So who are the stars in this game, Pete? And tell me, where do you think the edge is? I'm going to give you the stars that I see, and you tell me where you think the edge is. All right? I got the Mavericks. We're going to go Luka and Kyrie. 1-2 punch, maybe one of the best in the NBA. They average almost 60 points a game right now together. They drop assists that are over 10. They really, really are a productive group. The Celtics, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Who do you think has the edge there in the superstar status, Pete?
I think Tatum and Brown do. Kyrie has something to prove, so he's going to come in with a chip on his shoulders. I don't see anything stopping the Celtics juggernaut. I'm looking back in the scores of all the series going back, and the Mavericks handled their business sometimes by double digits. Yep. So they're coming in with confidence, but man, the Celtics just nobody's really had an answer for the Celtics either, because I'm looking at all their scores.
They haven't.
No,
they haven't.
A couple of squeakers, you get the Heat early on, surprised them a little bit, but I think that's when Porzingis went out. So yep.
It's going to be a good series, I think, but yeah. I am in agreement with you. I think the J&J tandem, is going to really prevail. I don't think that Here's the whole thing. I'll lay it out for Celtics fans. I'll lay it out for Mavericks fans. I'll lay it out for NBA fans right now. It's going to come down to one thing. The Timberwolves lost to the Mavericks because they could not keep Kyrie Irving out of the lane. He ate Michael Conley up for lunch. And you could see it from the very beginning. I said, there's no way the Mavericks are going to lose this series, because if they don't stop him from getting to the rim, they're not going to win the series. Now, let's move forward. You have Jrue Holiday for the Celtics, who's big, physical guard. And if he can keep Kyrie from getting into the lane, Celtics are going to win in 5, maybe 4. If he can really physically keep him out. And that's a really good advantage, I think, for the Celtics, because Michael Conley, just wasn't capable of staying with him through high ball screens and through some other things as well. And that's something I think the Celtics will have to rectify, because you're going to see an awful lot of Luka and Kyrie in ball screen action. You're going to see them in ball screen action. And when Luka sets a screen, he can dive, he can float, he can flare, he can do anything off a screen because he's so effective. And when he passes the ball, when he's moving the ball, he's made these other players, because no lineup, I'm going to say it right now, no lineup this porous, the Mavericks lineup, has ever gotten to. Maybe you could go, I don't know, maybe I'm misspeaking. I thought last year the Heat, their lineup wasn't strong, but they made it all the way to the finals. I didn't think they had that real strength of lineup and that depth. And then that's where they lost to the Nuggets, but they did make it all the way to the finals. And I feel the same way about the Mavericks in the West this year, is that they made it all the way, but they just have been living off these two guys. And if the Celtics can handle one of these two guys,
Take them out of the game. Yeah.
you take them out, it's going to be something. It's going to be something that'll really be to their advantage.
In the Celtics' first two series, they had one game where they had a brain fart. It seems like.
Yeah.
And then everywhere else, they're just cranking it out.
In both first series, they lost the second game.
Yeah, brain fart.
But the funny thing was
Like,
that
and they were like 20 points.
they were down almost every single time to the Pacers, though. When they swept that series, first game, Brown throws in that prayer three-pointer that banks in, that sends the game into overtime, and then they win game one. I mean, every single time when Halliburton got hurt at the end, the Pacers kind of limped through it, but they were in a dogfight with the Pacers every single game. Great that they came out on top, and a credit to Coach Mazzulla and his staff, because good coaching staffs win close games.
But here's the thing: does that series temper the Celtics, where now they're solid steel? You know what I mean? Like
I
that,
think
they're forged in fire in that series where, like you thought, Pacers were going to give them a hard time, which they did, but the Celtics still found ways to win.
It was still 4-0.
Right, still found ways to win.
Them. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
And there hasn't been anybody that they've confronted. You might say they got a little bit of a nice walk in. You know, they had Cleveland, but they have been dominant in those series.
Yeah.
Absolutely dominant. So when you say, okay, they didn't have a great opponent, the next question is, well, did they dominate them? And you say, yeah, they did. They dominated them. They're in great shape. They're playing great basketball. And it wouldn't be out of the realm that they sweep these guys, because that's how good they're playing right now.
Yeah.
Look at the lineup with me, and I think you're going to see what I'm talking about. All right, so you're going to have Kyrie start at the point guard for the Mavericks, and then they're going to have Jrue Holiday. And Holiday is a good point guard, physical, strong, can keep him out of the lane. He's going to be a problem for the Mavericks if all of that happens. If that doesn't happen for the Celtics, now you're going to see the Mavericks create the same problem for the Celtics that they created for everybody else. They're going to create mayhem with 2 and 3 guys only. And everybody else is going to be a role player with responsibilities of rebounding, defending, and doing all the other stuff on the other side. But that is, to me, the most critical matchup in the entire series right there. Kyrie Irving versus Holiday. If Holiday can handle his business, the Celtics win early. If Kyrie comes home and gets some of their lunch money early in the series and gets going and gets confident, it could be a really, really long series. But I think right now it would be difficult to say who gets the edge on that one. I think you might say the edge would go to the Mavericks in that position, though. Derek Jones out of UNLV, 6'6". This is a big stage for him. He's not been tested at this level, and he's got to go up against Jaylen Brown, the $50 million man. He speaks about 10 languages. He's unbelievable in so many ways, and he is absolutely on fire right now with clutch basketball. He hit that big shot at the end of the game. He saved the Celtics with that. And right now, there's most of the money going, and I'm going to throw this out for a couple of my guys out there who might have a tendency to look into the Vegas lines at different times.
Don't even need that anymore. You just need an app in Springfield.
And maybe even Kenny Stomsky. We can help him get out of the hole so Kenny gets out of the trunk of somebody's car this weekend. But we're going to give it to him. I think that Jaylen Brown would be a really good pick for MVP of this series. I think Jaylen Brown would be a very good pick. It's about plus $800 to get him as the MVP.
Here's the thing.
Tatum's favored.
I haven't heard any negativity coming out of the Celtics locker room.
No, they're glued in. They're glued in. This team
seems to me
they're glued in.
This is the same makeup I saw before one Husky team entered their final run.
Yep. What did you say that time about the Huskies?
They're loose.
They're
playing
loose.
with house money.
They're loose. They're loose. And I think the Celtics, there might be a little bit of tightness with the Celtics because they really want to get back there and win this one. Brown and Tatum will absolutely coronate themselves in Celtic land with a title. They'll be up there with the great teams, and I think that will be special too because they have been a special team this year. They really have been fun to watch.
But that stress dissipates after game one.
That's a huge, huge advantage, I would say, for the Celtics, though, with Brown going up against Jones. Now you got Doncic and White. White's been playing great, but, Luka was our MVP. How does that look now, Pete? When we called him MVP in the zone of the NBA, everybody else had this guy and that guy, and we came out and dude, it's Luka. He's been leading this team all year.
Yeah.
Averaged a triple-double almost. Unbelievable. So right there, I'm going to give that line. I'm going to give it to that line's going to go to the Mavericks. So if you say Kyrie over Holiday slightly, you say Brown over Jones by a decent bit. Now you say Doncic over White by a decent bit. Now you go P.J. Washington and Tatum. P.J. Washington's been terrific for the Mavericks. He's been their muscle guy. Big, strong, plays in the paint. If you come through, he's going to knock you. And if he's going to set some screens for Kyrie, believe me, he's going to get them open. And so he's been good, but you're going up against Tatum. Tatum's been averaging, 26, 27 points in the playoffs. I think he gets a bad rap. People say, well, he doesn't show up at clutch time all the time. I think that's a bad rap on him. I really do. I think you're going to see him have a great series, and I think you're going to see him really, I want to say, emancipate himself as one of the top great players in the NBA. He really, really is. He is a team guy. He's a good guy. He could put up a whole lot more points than he does if he took the approach that some of these other chuck and duck guys do. But he's on a great team. He knows that, and he has Jaylen Brown with him, and he has some other great players with him, and he shows humility, and he shows grace. That's what I see. So I know some people say, oh, he doesn't, show up. Get lost. That's so unwarranted. He's a great player, one of the tops in the NBA right now, and the Celtics have been lucky to have him.
In an NBA of individuals, he's a team player.
Yeah. The Celtics lineup doesn't have a center. This lineup doesn't really have a true basketball center. Not even Horford would go down as a true NBA center. He would be under power forward definition every day of the week. So they don't really have a center. So Jason Tatum does a lot of that big man work that they don't have. He's like Magic Johnson a little bit right now, where he's showing up everywhere. And I think he's fabulous. And so I think that's a big, big edge for the Celtics in that one. And now you're going to go to Daniel Gafford, who's big, strong inside presence, not going to score a ton of points, but him and Lively, the young rookie that we liked in the draft last year, Derek Lively out of Duke, 7-footer, runs the floor. He's going to be a little bit of a problem for the Celtics because he's just that young kind of bouncy type, and him and Gafford are both really good on the defensive end, and that's going to be, Horford. It's also going to be Porzingis, and so Porzingis, you have to see if they keep Horford. That's a little better, I think, matchup-wise for the Celtics. If they keep Porzingis, he's going to have to guard one of those guys inside, and that's going to be a little bit of a physical disadvantage for him. In the zone is going to go Celtics in 6, though. Pete's got him in 5. We're in unity as far as who's going, and we're gonna really, really take a look at that whole series. And we're going to keep you posted also about our draft. So I want to slip into our draft right now because we started with it last week in phase 1. I want to close out the show today. This is a Wednesday taping, folks, just so you know. Thursday night, tomorrow starts the Celtics. But we're also right now in mode, and it will be next week where we hold our NBA draft. Okay, so I promise everybody that I'm going to get it ready by next week. And so we're going to talk about our phase 2 today, and then we're going to move you all the way through, which is phase 3, which is the actual in-the-zone draft, which is going to be our second draft, and it's going to be classic. We're going to ask you to go back and watch last year's show where we did the draft, and we went through the whole draft and see some of the really good picks that we made. See some of the mistakes that we might have made as well, where we might have missed a guy. We might not have been high on so-and-so, and he not only did he get drafted in a different spot than we thought he would, but also had a very good season and did very well. But I think if you go back to that draft, you'll see that we did pretty well in, because the top of it was very easy. But I thought we did better in the middle of it than the actual draft did. And we would have included some of the players that are pretty good here, like Jamie Jaquez we had in our top a little bit. We also had Trace Jackson Davis, who we loved. We would have had him in the top. So we're going to talk about all of that. But today, what we want to do is give you our phase two. And what phase two is, we're going to go through it in one day. I wanted to lump it all together so that we give it to you. But what we have now is we have the second round prospects that we would look at and say, okay, and again, when we sit down and throw this whole thing out on the dance floor and we finally get a grip on who's in and who's out, because it was a little hairy there for a while about, who's in, who's out, and who's going to be on that draft board. I think some guys like JT Toppin, I don't want to pick on him, but I thought some other people did themselves a disservice by returning. Maybe the NIL has something to do with that, where you can get some great money, but I don't think they're getting all that great money that everybody thinks they're getting in this NIL stuff. I think that that's a little bit disparate from what the agents and some of the other people that are out there, the prevaricators out there about these numbers of $2 million for this guy. That's, that would have been in excess almost of the entire budget for that school. For their, and they have other great players that they got to pay too. So the 2 million number is really, really inflated. And what some of that number does, I can assure you this, and I can assure you this with firsthand knowledge. What those numbers do is it creates a lot of tension in the locker room, because you'll bring in a transfer coming through the portal, and you might have had a really good year last year with a group of guys, and some of them are back, and some of them have current NIL deals. But now you want to find that next guy that's really going to help you have another good year, maybe put you in the Final Four, maybe get you over the top and win that national title. He could be that next piece, right? That's how they're approaching things right now. And you sit there and you say, okay, but where would all of the money come from? Because you have these current guys currently getting paid that are all coming back. And so now when you come in and say, okay, we just found $1 million, let's say, throw out a number, $800,000 for this new great player. You previously have probably told all of the other guys on your roster, hey, we're out of money. We don't have any money to increase the current roster that we have. All of our money that we have right now has to go on our new players. And so when you get a player who comes in, now he sees the next player who just walked in the door get a better deal than him. I don't think that helps your locker room too much. And then you have the guy. It
sounds like what's going on in the pros.
It is. It's the same thing. And now this guy who just heard this number wants to go and say, hey, I was on the team that went to the Sweet 16. I was on the team that went to the Elite 8. I want you to pay me at least what you're paying him. And then the school's got to scramble. And then the school's got to find more money. But at the same time, you're going to be telling some people no. There's no doubt about it. You're going to have to tell some people no. And that's going to create dissension in the locker room. It also creates a pecking order in your locker room that's extremely, extremely unhealthy. If you told me that you're going to have 12 players on the team and you're going to divide X amount of dollars amongst all those players, I'd say, okay, you got a better chance at keeping team chemistry, keeping team integrity. But right now, the way it's going, you're absolutely throwing a Molotov cocktail into every single college locker room around the country. They've done it with the portal. They've done it with the NIL. I don't understand their rationale for it, but we're just going to keep knocking on it, Pete. We're just going to keep knocking on it. All right. So who's going that we think didn't we name last week? But they're still draftable. They're still going to be pretty good. When we put in all the international players, and there's quite a few of them, we're going to put them in. And I don't know that we're going to put them in the same way everybody else is putting them in, because I've been through a couple, looked at a couple, and I think that this year you're having some hype, some Euro hype. And I think that, last year was, you had some really good 2 out of the G League, 3 out of the G League, with Scoot Henderson and Amen and Osar Thompson, and then you had 1 out of college, and then you had 1 coming from France with Victor Wembanyama. This year, they're talking about 1 and 2 coming out of France. I don't have it that way, but they're talking about it coming out. And we'll talk about those gentlemen just in a second. We're going to spend time this week, although we got a busy week coming up with some travel and doing some other stuff. We are going to spend some time this week really trying to get into some film on the international players and watch some of their games, be able to look, because some of these gentlemen are really, really young. Some of these gentlemen aren't 7'4", 7'5", like Victor Wembanyama. Some of them, are going to take some time to develop. So that's going to be an NBA thing as well. I see some of these gentlemen that everybody thinks are instant coffee right now. They could take a long time to develop in the NBA. Some of these guys are 18, 19 years old. So let's go through some of the guys that we have in our NCAA only. This is our NCAA only people. And then we're going to give you our G League and give you that group of people that we have next that we think, when we put it all together next week, it's going to be the whole shebang of 58 picks, and we're going to have everything ready, rocking and rolling with you. We're excited about this. I really enjoy the draft. It's so much fun, But here's some people that we think. I don't know that we didn't even miss some of these guys also as first-round picks, because as you look at some of their careers, and that's what we like to base it on, we like to look at their NCAA career.
Yeah.
What did they actually do? One and done, I think that might be another show sometime. We go back on one and done and look at how many of those one and dones really got one and done and actually showed up and had great careers in the pros. I think that's an interesting take. But Tyler Kolek, out of Marquette, lead point guard for the Marquette team this year. Very, very solid point guard. You'd have to consider him to be one of the top point guards in the country. He's about 6'3", 6'2". I thought he took a little bit of a haircut when he got to the combine and maybe lost an inch or two. So I think that's critical. But he's a really good. He's able to run your team. I think athletically he's going to have a little bit of transition into the pros. I think he's going to struggle there athletically a little bit. Where Reed Shepherd showed up with a 42-inch vertical, I thought his athleticism might save the day for him. I think that Mr. Kolek will have a little bit of trouble. I think we're going to leave him in the second round. But he's certainly somebody, when we bake the cake, we're going to give him consideration in the first round. This next young man also, I wasn't sure if he was in the draft. He wasn't in the draft. Then I saw him play at a little bit of the combine. I could not understand why he didn't get invited up to the combine, but it was Jaden Ledee, somebody we had talked about all throughout the NCAA tournament, somebody we were very, very high on as a leader for his team out there. He's 6'10". He's pretty mobile, has a good skill set inside and around the basket, and doesn't shoot it bad from the perimeter. I think, Ledee is somebody maybe, as we put the cake down and start to throw in all the ingredients, he might slip into the first round. He's pretty good. Kaishan George, everybody has him in the first round, out of Miami, 6'7", wing. Another gentleman that reminds me a little bit of the international players, where they have a very thin frame. And it looks like they could use some bulking up and maybe get better that way. But, Kaishan George is one of those people. They have him in the first round, a lot of the mock drafts. I do not. 1 year at Miami, it wasn't a great year. Miami's team was absolutely awful this year. So I don't know, 1 year on an awful team, it doesn't really translate a lot, But, if you look at some of the careers that some of the guys that are in the NBA right now are having, Anthony Edwards, the year he was at Georgia, wasn't a great year, and he's turned into one of the best pros there is. So maybe that's not the only indicator. But we have Johnny Furphy out of Kansas, another young man. A lot of people have him in the first round. He's got some great, great physical attributes. He's big, long, can run, can jump. He'll dunk it on your head if you're not looking. I see him a little bit like a forward in the NBA, but maybe possibly he could play a little bit of big guard if he improves his ball handling skills. But I see him a little bit like Dante DiVincenzo, where he could probably work really hard on his jump shot and get set that way, and also the ability to put the ball down on the ground and dunk on people when need be. So I see him, that's a little bit of what I see. This gentleman, the colleges don't do these guys any good when they list them at 6'10", 6'11", and they're nowhere near that. And it comes down, and this gentleman we're going to talk about next took a pretty big haircut. He went from Stanford over to North Carolina and must have lost an inch or two or three along the way. And then on his way from North Carolina over to the NBA Combine might have lost. But they have Harrison Ingram, listed at about 6'5", 6'6". He didn't play well in the Combine as well. I think we could slide him into a second round, but he didn't really play well. But what he does do, and we'll see if it'll show up in an NBA game. It showed up at North Carolina. He makes big shots. He makes big shots. A little bit of a poor man's Robert Horry, just not as big, not as physical, and I think that's going to be an issue for him in the NBA. Armando Baycoat, another North Carolina player, 6'10", really doesn't have a great skill level for the NBA, but could maybe stick around as a rebounder, a body man. I think with his career at North Carolina, he had a very good career, never really eclipsed himself as one of the great players in the country that, I think the Carolina fans had hoped he would be, but he might be a late second rounder if, I don't know. We'll see. Armando Baycoat, North Carolina, we got to keep an eye on him. Ryan Dunn from Virginia, another gentleman who's in a bit of time and, turning out from Virginia. A lot of people high on him. I'm just not as high on him as they are. Didn't really tear it up at Virginia. I want to see you tear it up if you're going to come out after a short amount of time. And I didn't really see him tear it up, but you never know. Cam Christie from Minnesota. A lot of people talking about this young man. A lot of people are high on him. I think he's going to be okay. Not anything special, though, but he could probably get into the second round. Dylan Jones, Weber State, 6'5", decent size. He might be able to slide into the late first round. Not a bad combine. Wasn't a great combine, but it wasn't terrible. I thought he was okay. Pell Larson from Arizona, 6'5". He's a passer. He reminds me a little bit of Brandon Pojemski, where he might be pretty good, but I just didn't see it in the combine. I didn't really see him do anything great that I thought was there. Possibly late second round for us. P.J. Hall, I think we're going to move him up a little bit. 6'8", Clemson, really was one of the linchpins on that Clemson team that went really deep into the NCAA tournament this year. And I think he's 6'8", really great shooter, can stretch the floor for some people. I think he might be able to help a team. Jay Mitchell from California, Santa Barbara, possible in the first, second round. Jalen Wells from Washington State we like, not bad. There's a couple of guys that poked out at me in the combine. Enrique Freeman from Akron. Akron's not the biggest school in the world, but this gentleman played really well. He's 6'10", and he's out of Akron. I think the NBA scouts should keep an eye on him for a second round vary. Now we got Bronny James, Pete. Probably the most talked about player in this entire draft. I don't think we would have him on our draft board at all. I proposed a trade last week, which most of my friends from home absolutely tore me up for because they're big Knick fans and they love the Villanova boys. But I proposed that we would send Randall and Hart plus the number 24 pick to the Lakers for LeBron James with the promise that we would draft his son with the 25 pick. Now, I get it. People don't like LeBron. They think he's finished. I think he's a long way from finished. I think he's got at least 2 or 3 good years. You put him with Brunson, you put him with Anunoby, you've got a really good franchise. When you draft his son, whether you think his son is worthy of being drafted or not, when you draft his son, you're gonna sell a lot of jerseys. You're going to sell a lot of franchise equipment in New York. A lot of Knicks hats that have Bronny's number on one side and his dad's number on the other side. It would be the first that I'm aware of NBA franchise for father and son to play together. There have been other father-son combinations. Del Curry, Steph Curry. They didn't play at the same time. Del Curry was an absolutely great player and trained his son. Jalen Brunson and his dad, Rick Brunson. I'm not sure Rick Brunson ever played in the NBA, but he was a great player as well. Temple. I think he might have played in the NBA for a little while as well. But there's some other really good ones out there, some other father-son tandems. But this would be the first one that I'm aware of that would play together. And so what do you think, Pete? You draft them?
I would.
Lakers?
I think the Lakers are going to pull them wherever their pick is.
Lakers? The Lakers are... they're a little deep. They're a little deep in the draft. I'm trying to check it right now.
I don't see Bronny going any earlier.
They're 17.
I don't see him going any earlier.
They're 17. The Lakers.
Sentimental pick.
Oh, I would think if you took him at 17, I don't know. I'm going to look and see if they have a second round pick. I would think at 17, taking him is I don't think the Lakers are close enough. This is the reason I say for the NBA to make the trade. That's why I think the NBA would benefit from it. Because if you want LeBron to finish his career in the finals, anywhere close to that, it's a whole lot closer than it is with the New York Knicks than it is with the Los Angeles Lakers. The Los Angeles Lakers are in total rebuild mode. They're about to hire a guy who never coached a day in his life to be the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers if they hire J.J. Redick. Now, I like J.J. Redick as much as the next guy, but coaching basketball isn't for everyone that you can just throw into the seat and say, didn't they just learn that from Darvin Ham? Didn't they just learn that from all of the other coaches that James has had that haven't been able to bring out the best in him lately because he's running things? You need somebody in there who is a coach that absolutely runs things. I don't know that that person exists. Maybe not. Jalen Bridges from Baylor, really good player. David Jones from Memphis. He could slide in there second round. Isaiah Collier, everybody was very, very high on him. This is sometimes what happens, and I think the NBA is going to get sued for this next, or the NCAA probably gets sued for this next. They get sued for the fact that you're making players go to school for 1 year. Because if they let Isaiah Collier go out without playing at USC this year, he's definitely a lottery pick. When he went to USC this year and they got a chance to see him, and then he went, and looked, they got a little closer look, he lost a lot of value. But he lost a lot of value because you made him go to college. You lost a lot of value because at one time his prospect was much higher than it is right now. And I don't know how many draft spots that going to USC cost him, but it was a lot. It was a lot. I would say he was a lottery pick last year if he could have done it, and then came all the way down. All right, Pete, what do we got, about a minute left?
Yep.
Okay. Isaiah Collier, Jared McCain from Duke. Yep, maybe throw him in there. Here's somebody I'm going to throw in the second round just because I love this guy's attitude, and he's a deadly, deadly shooter. He could help an NBA team stretch the floor. Cam Spencer out of UConn. I like him. All right, Pete. We're in the zone. We'll be back next week, and we will have the draft for you. We'll be traveling a little bit this week and around to see some games, and we're also going to look at some different stuff. When this open live period comes, when the basketball comes around here, they'll be in Springfield. There'll be some great basketball locally, and we're going to maybe get down there and cover some of it live. We're in the zone. Everybody have a great week. We'll see you next Thursday, and I hope everybody stays well and enjoys this beautiful weather that we've been having. In the zone, baby. We'll see you next week.